Hi guys, it's Miss Ainsley. So I have another story as part of our fairy tale week, and this one is called The Frog Prince Continued. And it's talking to us, or it's going to tell us about what happens to the frog who turned into a prince when the princess kissed him, and what happens to the prince and the princess after the story. So, The Frog Prince Continued is by John Skieska, and it is painted by Steve Johnson. So, The Frog Prince Continued. Here we have what looks like the ending of a storybook, and it says, "The princess kissed the frog, he turned into a prince, and they lived happily ever after." Here's the princess with her pink dress, and the prince, who was a frog, has a green suit, which is kind of appropriate because frogs are green. So that's a cool detail. Let's see, did they live happily ever after? Well, let's just say they lived sort of happily for a long time. Okay, so they weren't so happy. In fact, they were miserable. "Stop sticking your tongue out like that," nagged the princess. Here you can see his tongue is long, still like a frog. That's funny. "How come you never want to go down to the pond anymore?" whined the prince. The prince and the princess were so unhappy. They didn't know what to do. So it looks like they just argue all the time. The prince isn't even looking at the princess. He's sticking his tongue out at her. And she's reading a newspaper. And they're just always having arguments. That's not good. "I would prefer that you not hop around on the furniture," said the princess, "and it might be nice if you got out of the castle once in a while to slay a dragon or giant or whatever." Here she is brushing her hair. And here the frog prince is. He's jumping around. And she's just full of complaints. Let's see what he says. "The prince didn't feel like going out and slaying anything. He just felt like running away. But then he reread his book, and it said right there at the end of his story, they lived happily ever after. The end. So he stayed in the castle and drove the princess crazy." Oh no. There he is looking at his fairy tale. Then, one day, the princess threw a perfectly awful fit. "First, you keep me awake all night with your horrible croaking snore. Now I find a lily pad in your pocket." There, she's holding it up. "I can't believe I actually kissed your slimy frog lips. Sometimes I think we would both be better off if you were still a frog." She is angry at him. My goodness. That's when the idea hit him. The prince thought, still a frog. "Yeah, that's it." And he ran off into the forest, looking for a witch who could turn him back into a frog. Here he goes, running into the deep, dark forest. He wants to be a frog again. Do you think that's going to solve their problem? Let's see who he runs into. The prince hadn't gone far when he ran into just the person he was looking for. Miss Witch! Excuse me, Miss Witch. I wonder if you could help me?" "Say, you're not looking for a princess to kiss, are you?" asked the witch. "Oh no, I've already been kissed. I'm the frog prince. Actually, I was hoping you could turn me back into a frog." "Are you sure you're not looking for a beautiful sleeping princess to kiss and wake up?" Look at this witch. She's sitting on a red chair. She's got a TV in the forest. That's silly. And she has a big, long nose and pointy fingers. She definitely looks like an old witch. And it sounds like she's talking about Sleeping Beauty. Here she is again. She's got a remote here that says nasty spells. Uh-oh. No, I'm the frog prince." "That's funny. You don't look like a frog."
Well, no matter. If you're a prince, you're a prince. I'll have to cast a nasty spell on you. I can't have any princess waking up Sleeping Beauty before the 100 years are up.
The prince didn't stick around to see which nasty spell the witch had in mind. He ran deeper into the forest until he came to a tiny cottage, where he saw another lady who might be able to help him. He did not stick around to see what Sleeping Beauty's witch would have done. That's pretty good, because I would be scared of her nasty spells too. Now it looks like he's going into another house, and this door says the fairest. When I think fairest of them all, I think of Snow White. So let's see if that has something to do with this witch. Miss Witch, Miss Witch, excuse me, Miss Witch. I wonder if you could help me. I'm a prince and...
What did you say? Prince?
Croaked the witch. No, no. I'm not the prince looking for Sleeping Beauty. But yes, I'm the Frog Prince. And I'm looking for a member of your profession who could turn me back into a frog, so I can live happily ever after. Here's this witch. She's got a black pointy hat and glasses, and she's reading a magazine. Do we think she can help?
Frog Prince, you say? That's funny. I thought frogs were little green guys with webbed feet. Well, no matter. If you're a prince, you're a prince. And I can't have any princes rescuing Snow White. Here, eat the rest of this apple.
Ew, look at the apple. That is definitely rotten. And we were right, she was talking about Snow White. The apple's dripping green goo, that looks disgusting. The prince, who knew his fairy tales and knew a poisoned apple when he saw one, didn't even stay to say, "No, thank you." He turned and ran deeper into the forest. Soon he came to a strange-looking house with a witch outside. Here he is, his leg here, walking down the trail further into the forest. Let's see. Miss Witch, excuse me, Miss Witch. I wonder if you could help me. I'm the frog.
If you're a frog, I'm the King of France,
said the witch. No, I'm not a frog. I'm the Frog Prince. But I need a witch who will turn me back into a frog so I can live happily ever after. Can you do that? Said the prince, in one long breath. The witch eyed the prince and licked her rather plump lips.
Why, of course, dearie. Come right in. Maybe I can fit you in for lunch.
All right, so here's our third witch here. She doesn't look as scary as the other two did. She's got like brown wavy hair, and she's wearing a pink checkered apron, and she looks like she's picking ice cream cones. That's silly. Her garden is ice cream and popsicles. That's not something that grows in a regular garden. Is she going to help the prince? The prince stopped on the slightly gummy steps. Something about this house seemed very familiar. He broke off a corner of the windowsill and tasted it. Gingerbread. I hope you don't mind me asking, Miss Witch, but you happen to know any children by the name of Hansel and Gretel? Uh-oh, look. We can see the witch in the window of this candy house here. It's got M&Ms on the walls. And she is reading a recipe for roast prince. Oh my gosh, she wants to cook him. He better get out of there.
Why, yes, Prince darling, I do. I'm expecting them for dinner.
The prince, who, as we said before, knew his fairy tales, ran as fast as he could deeper into the forest. Soon, he was completely lost. Well, at least he got away from her, but now what's he going to do? He saw someone standing next to a tree. The prince walked up to her, hoping she wasn't a witch, for he'd had quite his fill of witches. Madam, I'm the Frog Prince. Could you help me? Gosh, do you need it? Said the fairy godmother. You are the worst-looking frog I've ever seen. Here's the fairy godmother in her big pink gown. And it looks like she's practicing spells. with carriages and pumpkins. Hey, that makes me think of Cinderella. And look at her wand, it's shaped like a candy cane. That's silly. I'm not a frog, I'm the frog prince, said the prince, getting a little bit annoyed. And I need someone to turn me back into a frog so I can live happily ever after.
Well, I'm on my way to see a girl in the village about going to a ball, but I suppose I could give it a try. I've never really done frogs before, you know.
And with that, the fairy godmother waved her magic wand and turned the prince into a beautiful... Here she is casting a spell. Can she do it? Turned him into a beautiful carriage. The prince couldn't believe his rotten luck. Here's her candy cane wand casting the spell. And here he is as a carriage. Look, he still has his eyes. And his mouth is the carriage seat. What's he going to do now? Oh my goodness. The sun went down, the forest got spookier, and the prince became more and more frightened. It's getting really dark. I hope he can get home in time, or find somebody to help him. Oh, how silly I've been. I could have been sitting at home with the princess, living happily ever after. But instead, I'm stuck here in the middle of this stupid forest, turned into a stupid carriage. Now, I'll probably just rot and fall apart and live unhappily ever after. The prince thought these terrible, frightening kinds of thoughts, and a few worse, too awful to tell, until far away in the village, the clock struck midnight. Here he is. It's hard to see because it's super dark in this picture, but he's down here, and he looks really sad. He's been worrying for hours, but the clock just struck midnight, so maybe that will help him. It helped in Cinderella. The carriage instantly turned back into his former prince self. Good. And he ran by the light of the moon until he was safe inside his own castle.
Where have you been? I've been worried sick. You're 7 hours late and your dinner is cold. Your clothes are a mess.
Princess has been worried about him. Look at her face. He was gone for such a long time. The prince looked at the princess, who had believed him when no one else in the world had. The princess who had actually kissed his slimy frog lips. The princess who loved him. The prince kissed the princess. They both turned into frogs, and they hopped off happily ever after. The end. Here's the prince and the princess as frogs. So the prince solved his own problem. All he had to do was think about how much he loved the princess, and then he kissed her, and they both turned into frogs. So hopefully that solved their problem, right? All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed reading The Frog Prince Continued, which tells us the story of what happened after the original fairy tale. And I will see you guys for the next Read Aloud.